Welcome to my books and storytime by mybookssummary.com. The 10 Commandments for Business Failure by Donald R. Keough. Imagine sitting in a room full of successful business leaders, all nodding along to advice on how to win in business. Now, picture someone standing up and saying, "Let me tell you how to fail instead." That's exactly what Donald R. Keough, former president of Coca-Cola, does in the 10 Commandments for Business Failure. Keough, a legend in the business world, spent decades at the top, watching companies rise and fall. But instead of writing a typical self-help book about success, he takes the opposite approach. He tells us exactly what not to do. With wit, wisdom, and a touch of sarcasm, he lays out 10 ironclad commandments that guarantee failure. If you follow them, he promises your business will crash and burn spectacularly. Of course, the real point of the book is to help leaders recognize these pitfalls before they make the same mistakes. Each chapter humorously unpacks a commandment, filled with real-world examples of companies that either fell into the trap or avoided it just in time. So, if you're in business or just fascinated by how success and failure unfold, this book is your crash course in what not to do. Let's break it down commandment by commandment. Commandment number 1. Quit taking risks. If you want your business to fail, the first thing you should do is stop taking risks. Play it safe, never innovate, and avoid anything that seems uncertain. Sounds absurd, right? Yet many companies do exactly this. Keough points out that every great business was built on risk. Whether it's Apple revolutionizing tech, Amazon betting big on e-commerce, or even Coca-Cola introducing new products, success comes from stepping outside comfort zones. Take IBM as an example. At one point, they were too comfortable in the hardware business and ignored the growing demand for personal computers. What happened? They fell behind, and companies like Microsoft took the lead. Keough warns that if a business avoids risk for too long, it becomes stale. And in the fast-moving world of business, stale is just another word for dead. Lesson: if you're not taking calculated risks, you're already on the path to failure. Commandment number 2. Be inflexible. Want to kill your company? Insist on doing things the way they've always been done. Resist change. Ignore market shifts. After all, if something worked in the past, it should work forever, right? Wrong. The business landscape is constantly evolving, and companies that refuse to adapt are doomed. Keough uses Kodak as a textbook example. Once a giant in photography, they ignored digital technology for too long, convinced that film would never die. Spoiler alert, it did, and Kodak paid the price. Contrast that with Netflix, which started as a DVD rental company but quickly pivoted to streaming. Had they stayed inflexible, they would have gone the way of Blockbuster, which, by the way, did exactly that. Lesson: flexibility isn't just important, it's survival. Adapt or die. Commandment number 3. Isolate yourself. The best way to drive your business into the ground? Stop listening to your customers, employees, and even your own team. Just sit in your ivory tower and assume you know everything. Keough warns that many leaders fall into this trap, especially when they become successful. They stop seeking feedback, surround themselves with yes men, and cut themselves off from the reality of their market. He gives the example of New Coke, a product that Coca-Cola launched based on internal decision-making rather than real consumer insights. The result? A massive backlash, proving that even the biggest companies can fail when they don't listen. Lesson: stay connected. Listen to your customers, employees, and critics. If you don't, failure is just around the corner. Commandment number 4. Assume infallibility. If you want to fail spectacularly, start believing you're too big, too smart, or too powerful to make mistakes. History is full of businesses that thought they were invincible until they weren't. Keough highlights companies like Enron, whose executives believed they could manipulate markets without consequences, and Lehman Brothers, which ignored warning signs of financial disaster. The moment a company starts thinking, "We can't possibly fail," they're already on the path to doing just that. Arrogance blinds leaders to problems that could have been fixed before they became disasters. Lesson: stay humble. The moment you think you're invincible is the moment you're most vulnerable. Commandment number 5. Play the game for the sake of playing. Some businesses lose their purpose. They start focusing on internal politics, pleasing shareholders, or maintaining appearances rather than creating real value. This, Keough argues, is a sure way to fail. He points to companies that become obsessed with stock prices rather than innovation. When businesses start playing short-term games to look good in quarterly reports, they lose sight of long-term success. Lesson: focus on real value, not just short-term wins. If you lose sight of why you started, failure will follow. Commandment number 6. Don't take time to think. In today's fast-paced world, leaders often feel pressure to act quickly. But Keough argues that thoughtless action is just as dangerous as inaction. He gives examples of businesses that made rash decisions, like overexpanding too quickly or launching products without testing them, only to regret it later. The best leaders, he says, take time to think deeply about their decisions. Warren Buffett, for example, is famous for saying no to most investment opportunities. Why? Because he takes time to think before making big moves. That's how he avoids disaster. Lesson: thoughtful decision-making is a lost art. Slow down, think, and then act. Commandment number 7. Put all your faith in experts. Experts are great, but blindly trusting them without using your own judgment? That's a disaster waiting to happen. Keough warns against relying too much on consultants, analysts, and external advisors. While their insights can be helpful, no one understands your business better than you do. He uses examples of businesses that followed bad advice from consultants, leading to massive failures. The lesson: experts can be wrong. Always trust your own instincts. Commandment number 8. Love your bureaucracy. Nothing kills innovation faster than layers of unnecessary bureaucracy. If a company has too many rules, approvals, and red tape, creativity dies. Keough argues that some companies get so bogged down in procedures that they forget to actually do things. He compares this to a car spinning its wheels in the mud. Lots of effort, no movement. Lesson: keep bureaucracy in check. Streamline decision-making so creativity and action can thrive. Commandment number 9. Send mixed messages. If you want to confuse and demoralize your team, give them conflicting priorities. Change direction constantly. Make big promises, then fail to follow through. Keough explains that great leaders provide clarity. Employees need to know what the company stands for and where it's headed. Without that, confusion leads to failure. Lesson: be clear, consistent, and committed. Otherwise, you'll lose your team. Commandment number 10. Be afraid of the future. Finally, the worst mistake: being so scared of the future that you do nothing. Keough warns that fear leads to paralysis, and in business, standing still is the same as moving backward. Great companies embrace the future, take risks, and evolve. Those that don't, well, they fade into history. Lesson: the future is coming whether you like it or not. Face it with confidence. Final thoughts. Keough's book is a refreshing, humorous, and brutally honest take on business failure. By showing us what not to do, he gives us a roadmap for success. The key takeaway: stay adaptable, humble, and willing to take risks. If you run a business or dream of starting one, read this book. It might just save you from yourself. Stay tuned for more enlightening content. Head over to www.mybooksummary.com. Don't forget to subscribe and share the magic with friends. And let's grow together through the power of books and interesting stories.